Welcome back. An increasing number of Islamic schools are starting to unionize, leaving parents, students, and the community at large divided on their views of unionization. On the one hand, there are financial implications for parents, but on the other hand, there are also Islamic educators who many say are underpaid and in some cases not treated fairly and respectfully. To help us understand this issue, we'll begin our discussion today with Principal Riyad Khan and Vice Principal Ali Haroon of Gibraltar Leadership Academy. A full disclosure here, I am a regular volunteer with Gibraltar Leadership Academy, and Ali, one of our guests, is my husband. Riyad, Ali, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
We're talking about a topic today that's becoming very common in specifically in the Muslim community with Islamic schools, and it's the issue of unionization. So I want to begin with, very basic terminology. How would you explain unionization to the average person?
Well, I think unionization is basically giving employees a united voice, a collective bargaining unit that can negotiate with the employer, with the managers, and it takes the pressure off of individuals trying to go in and negotiate things like benefits, salaries, vacation, etc.
Okay, that's very helpful. I know both of you were a part of, one of the very first Islamic schools that unionized. So what was your experience then in terms of, why unionization was important to you guys at the time, and at the time you were educators at this particular institution? So Ali, maybe let's start with you. What are your thoughts on that?
Sure. A lot of the issues that we had, or the problems that led to the unionization process, were centered around a lack of communication, or communication channels that weren't properly established when, the school was initially founded.
Mm-hmm.
Over the years, the school continued to grow, and the teachers and the administration, they grew further apart based on the responsibilities that they had. And because of that, there were often cases where there would be discussions about how the teacher is doing in the classroom, where the administration wouldn't know, or there'd be issues brought to the administration and they wouldn't be able to understand what's going on. Furthermore, there was a lack of collaborative professional development.
Mm-hmm.
Where,
what do you mean by that?
Well, what we would do is we would discuss as a school how to grow the school, how to push forward, and how to continue to guide our students to what is best for what we felt was the school's vision.
You mean by we, you mean the teachers and administration. There was a communal effort to move the institution forward.
Correct. There was a communal effort, but the professional development that was happening was often segregated
Mm-hmm.
between the administration and the staff.
Mm-hmm.
So unfortunately, there would be a vision put forth by the staff that we would sit together and figure out how we want to carry it out, and the administration would sometimes have a different view on this.
So you think because of that lack of communication, it sort of just made the two parties go farther apart, and that led to I guess, not the rise, but that led to the path of unionization?
Correct. There was just a lack of communication leads to people feeling like they're alone, feeling they're alienated, and their concerns aren't being heard. And so that's where the unionization comes in, where it's a collective, there's an approach to try to get a collective voice being heard to represent the teachers.
So walk me through the unionization process, because in some situations, it's a very positive, happy-go-lucky, but it sounds like there were some tensions right from the get-go. So how did that process unfold, and what do you think was the outcome at the time for you guys as educators? I know since then you've moved on, but at the time, what were some of the, feelings of parents, students, and even yourself?
Well, I think the individuals who initiated the process, going off of what Ali mentioned, felt they were disconnected from management, and they felt that they did not have that voice. Mm-hmm. So by initiating the process of starting the union, they felt like, okay, someone can come in and assist us in negotiating with the employer in order to establish our rights in the school. Now, I think what the friction really began where the management, I guess, seemed that the union was coming in as a third party, not understanding the school culture, not understanding the financial aspect of the school, for example, and basically dictating how things ought to be within the school. And I think this was, from the management perspective, something they were not ready for. A lot of times change is really difficult for any organization. Yeah. And when you have this third party coming in and basically trying to assert themselves into the organization, there might be some pushback by management. And I think that's where the problems really began. Because unionization in general is a really politicized institution, I think that it just caused some friction between staff and management.
So I think those are all, it's important grounds and important information. Now we're starting to see, I think that was the first Islamic school, but since I've heard of at least 2 other ones that have unionized. So what do you think, you're both educators now, you guys have your own school, you're administrators as well. So wearing that hat and thinking about it, why do you think unionization is happening now? Because issues of communication, professionalism within Islamic organizations, lack of funding, for example, for teachers or whatever the case have you, these are issues that have been existing, I know, since I was growing up, and I saw that, right? I saw people who were in educational institutions. So what do you think it is now that's given this push? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's difficult to say why any specific institution would choose to follow unionization. So I don't want to speak on anyone else's behalf. The best I could say is that once you see that there's an institution that is able to come together and initiate that process, it gives a different organization or a different group the ability to feel like they can be a part of this as well. And I think when they saw that the first school started the unionization process and the second school started, slowly they began to start having those discussions, and from there it's naturally built towards let's take a shot at it.
Mm-hmm. Riyad, anything to add to that, or?
Well, I mean, I think that going back again to the causes behind it, I think relationship building is really key, and as administrators now, I think that we're seeing that relationship building is so important in trying to connect with your staff. And when that relationship is not there, when it's not strong, then individuals might see, okay, well, we need someone to come in and advocate on our behalf. And as Ali mentioned, when other institutions started to do it, other Islamic schools started to follow suit. So I think it's more so, okay, let's see how that goes, and let's see, how else can we benefit from the same process.
So we've talked about one perspective, and that's the teachers, administrators. We've talked about the unionization itself, unionization process. I think there are 2 other key parties that are missing from this conversation, and that's parents and students. So what are some of the implications that we're seeing unionization has had on parents and students? And I'll give you, even in the CBC, I was just reading the other day about another school that sort of shut down, and parents were sort of, given a notice saying, that's it, we're done. You need to find something else. What kind of impacts are those having on students, you guys think?
Well, obviously, if you take the viewpoint of a child or a student who is in high school, in elementary or middle school, when a school shuts down, immediately now their bubble is destroyed, or they need to go find another location. They have to find another school, a new set of friends. Everything basically changes. And when you're in high school or middle school, elementary, that's your world.
That's your life, yeah.
So it's difficult for them to come to terms with what's happening and to understand some of the professional implications or what's causing it. To them, they just see that the school is closing down, and now I have to find a new world to live in. So it's a difficult process for them, definitely. And I think as parents, we need to understand what the kids are going through and try to, fill in some of those gaps or fill in some of those concerns that the students will have.
So Riyad, let me throw that question to you. How do you fill some of those gaps and those concerns that the students have?
Well, I think that, first of all, it's an excellent question, because ultimately it is all about the students and the families, and they're the most impacted by this. And unfortunately, due to the inability for staff and management to come together and work through their problems, ultimately the students lose out. And just from our perspective, just our school in general, it's because of the students. It's because the students, were left without a school, that they felt it was a huge shock to the community, and they reached out and they said, what should we do? And from, as educators, our concern is our students. It's always going to be our students. So we kind of like sprung into action and say, okay, let's try to see if we can, provide an opportunity where you don't have to move away from the friends and the teachers that you're familiar with. So that's what we try to do. We try to be that, that gap filler. But it can be quite traumatic. And in fact, in our school right now, a lot of the kids who came along with us, they're still feeling the impacts of what happened and the closure of their school. So it's important for us as adults to understand that at the end of the day, when you're talking about education, it's all about the students. And you have to understand that you're trying to provide the best environment for them. And I mean, the staff would argue that their intent in even starting the process would be to provide a better learning environment for the students. And if the staff is happy, ultimately the classroom will be a happier place.
I think just as you guys are talking about keeping students at the center, I'm just keep having flashbacks of the Florida shooting, because even the whole conversation about arming teachers with guns, etc. It's you're thinking about the students and the safety of the students and the comfort of that, and it just brought me to that. So just I guess based on all of your experiences and everything that we've discussed, I'm going to ask you guys a very blunt question. I don't know if you guys will answer it, but I'm going to try anyway. Are you pro or against unionization?
It's a tough question, and to be honest, I can't say it's pro or con, because there's benefits and then there's the negative side to everything that we do. For example, it'd be a huge pro if our institutions can use this process, this unionization process, to grow, to implement more professional codes of conduct, to make sure that we are holding each other accountable through means that we are establishing. So it's not an ad hoc governance, and we are trying to make sure that we do the best we can with what we have, but also making sure that we're maintaining a certain level of professionalism.
And what about the cons of it then?
The cons, a lot of it will come to the financial side of it. With unionization, sometimes there can be a demand for higher pays and pay increases and vacation pay, that kind of stuff. And we know that there's already a funding gap for private schools. Not having a government source of funding for our schools is difficult, as parents are already paying taxes for the public schools, plus they pay an extra tuition for the school that they're sending their children to. So it's tough to ask for more from the parents, but it's also difficult to sustain a school which has such high costs.
So those are very helpful points. You didn't answer my question, but that's fine. I'll leave it at that. Just as we wrap up, so question for you, Riyadh. What if tomorrow's Sunday, but what if Monday, you get a notice saying that your staff at Gibraltar Leadership Academy have decided to unionize? What would be your response to that?
Well, first of all, it is the employees' rights. It is their right to want to unionize. And if they initiated the process, we would have to work along with them in doing so to try and, I guess, answer some of the issues that would cause that to happen. We're trying to be more proactive. So we talked about relationship building, for example. So with our staff currently, we're including them on every decision that we make. It's more of a partnership than a management versus staff. And we try to encourage their professional development. We try to encourage them to take initiative within the school, because at the end of the day, we're all, again, here for the students. And if we can take that approach, and if we had that shared vision, then I think that a lot of the problems that arise and would cause someone to initiate that process might be resolved. So, if it were to happen, we would deal with it accordingly, and we would work alongside with them as we've been doing. But we hope that our relationship with the staff currently would allow us to have that open channel of communication, so that we don't necessarily get to that point.
I know as a volunteer of Gibraltar, and I happen to be married to you, Ali, I know I can speak to that relationship building. So thank you, both of you, for taking the time to come on our show.
Thank you for having us again.
Thank you so much.